I want to tell you why I think it's a good idea to stop trying to convince people that they are wrong. Now, the thing about social media is that it has done a lot of great things and a lot of horrible things. And although most of the horrible things have been kind of manufactured, and I'll explain what I mean in a minute, real focus of this particular instance of Vlogmas is for me to tell you how I feel about a particular situation. And that is specifically on Twitter. And, to a lesser extent, all the other social media do the same thing. But where I see it the most is on Twitter. And of course, when Twitter was being abandoned, for lack of a better word, by a certain group of people, you didn't see it as much. But now that Elon Musk has taken over and has decided to bring back all these people that were either banned or whatever, you're seeing it more and more now. And that is trying to convince people that they are wrong because they don't believe the same things you do. And you might be wondering, why does it matter and why is it wrong? So let's start with why does it matter? One of the reasons why most social media trying to imitate Twitter was not doing well was because they were trying to copy that confrontational style that had become very popular in Twitter. When Twitter started out, it was a lot of fun. Everybody was saying whatever they wanted, nobody got in trouble, we were just expressing ourselves. Then it started becoming a way for countries that otherwise would not be able to speak to have a voice. And eventually it became this place where people were so confrontational about everything. And in a sense, it was driven by bots and other circumstances that we're not going to necessarily get into in this video because that's not the focus of this video. But we're not going to deny that there was undue influence on all sides, from purchased, shall we say, visitors to Twitter, or accounts that were created with the sole purpose of driving a particular narrative. And so we all got into it. And of course, we're thinking that we're debating another human being. And it turns out that no, we were not. We were debating either computer creations or accounts that were specifically driven to give us a certain perspective about things. And the bottom line is this: you can't convince a person that they're wrong unless they want to. Now, let me see how I explain this in a way that would make sense, because it makes sense in my head, and then when I start talking on this microphone, I kind of sort of get sidetracked. But anyway, let me give you an example of on real life. If you ask the average American what they care about, regardless of political affiliation or religious belief, they will probably give you the exact same points. All of them. If any of them work for corporate America, they're all going to tell you that they don't get paid enough for what they do. If any of them have children in schools, they will tell you that they don't agree with what they're teaching their children or how they're teaching their children. If you ask them about in a grocery store, they will all tell you that the food is too expensive or gas is high. We all have the exact same, well, let me put it this way. All the people that are not ridiculously rich and don't care about any of this stuff, the average person, will care about the same things. And even the rich people will occasionally give you the story about how they don't agree with how their children are being taught or what they're being taught. Now, the specifics of each one of those situations might vary from person to person, but the reality is that we all care about the same things. And so when you see a person, like, for example, a lot of people get on my case because I don't hate old Trump supporters. And the reality is that I happen to have, like most of us do, a lot of family members and friends who happen to be Trump supporters, not because they don't like people from other races or because they want to discriminate against certain situations or people. but because he hit a nerve when he came on the campaign. Unfortunately, in the process of hitting that nerve, he also provided a lot of misinformation. Now, if you go back to the 40s and the 50s and you ask people that have since gotten out of certain extremist groups, you will find out that the reason why they hated black people so much was because they were fed a narrative that black people came to take over their jobs. Much like this group now thinks that Latinos are out to get their jobs. Neither one of those things is correct entirely. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take the Latinos right now, because that's the group I know and that's the situation I know. I was not alive in the 40s and the 50s. The reality is that the average person, and I include myself in this, by the way, is not willing to go to a farm, spend 8 to 10 hours in the hot sun grabbing apples from an orchard for pennies on the dollar because they get paid by the pound and not by the actual hours that they are working. I don't know about you, but I have no intention of sitting in the sun to collect apples so I collect 50 apples and only get $1 for the day. Okay? That's just not what's going to happen. So, in reality, yes, Latino workers who don't have they and by the way, sometimes they do have the education, they just don't have the paperwork. Will come to this country and go ahead and work in the farms collecting the fruits and the vegetables that we don't want to collect for a measly salary. And so that is what they say, is that they're taking your jobs away from you. Interestingly enough, if you were actually willing to do that job, you would be wanting to get paid by the hour. You would expect at least minimum wage, which would then raise the price of the food that you're eating. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Another example of this whole thing about Latinos come to take or any person that is here as an immigrant and doesn't have the paperwork is, of course, sweatshops, where people will work for probably pennies on each garment made and not by the hours that they work. And the funny thing about that one is that if we were working and we were getting paid our normal salaries for doing that job, again, clothes would not cost $5 and $10 for a dress or a pair of pants. Because you see, everything is a function of everything else. Now, I'm not saying that that has to stay like that forever. What I'm saying is that when somebody gives you a piece of information, I don't care if they're on the left or on the right, and I will get to the left in a minute. It doesn't matter what they tell you. You need to go beyond what they tell you and do your own research before you decide to just believe whatever your party believes. Because that's why people can, quote, convince you, end quote, of what's right and what's wrong, because you're allowing somebody to think for you. Now, let's take the left for a second. One of the things that cracks me up about the left is when they try to go too, for lack of a better word, too socialist. And of course, the right goes ahead and starts attacking, oh, they want to go socialist. Well, first of all, socialism, communism, and dictatorship are not the same things. And it would behoove you to learn the difference. But are there times when they want things that I know they can't get? Absolutely. For example, I don't want everybody to get the same pay for the same work. This is something that sometimes some unions will go for, and it infuriates the crap out of me, because I don't see how a teacher that has been in a position for 10 years should get paid the same thing that a teacher that just graduated from college. No. And I'm not saying that's the way it works. I'm just giving you an example so that you can register what I'm trying to tell you. I don't see why I will go to a union and expect to get the same treatment that somebody that's been there for longer than I have. And we all have to agree. What happens when I don't agree with what you want? It's a reality of life. Are unions the best option for all workers in all situations? No. I'm sorry, there's no way you can convince me. I have been on the receiving end of too many times when groups of people have wanted to create a union, and in reality is they don't know what they're talking about. Oh, we all want fair this and fair that. Yeah, and I agree with you. But I don't see how you expect me to accept that all people doing the same exact job should get paid the exact same thing. It just doesn't. Now, you also have a situation where you have unions where they have some benefits that you sit there and you go, wait, why does a teacher need to have included in their union agreement that their medical benefits include plastic surgery? And don't get me started on other benefits that you sit there and you go, what? Not only that, but the idea, and I'm telling you this because I actually lived this when my daughter was in school. We had a union in Puerto Rico that was backed by the American, one of the American teachers unions, and these people allowed a professor who was mentally ill, and I don't mean mentally ill like she gets depression or no, we're talking a person that would show up to school and not be able to teach her students because she was in the middle of a psychotic episode. Diagnosed, I'm not making this up. But the school could not fire her or put her on leave unless she wanted to be on leave because the union refused to allow it. That makes absolutely no sense because at the end of the day, who gets the short end of the stick on that one? If you're guessing the students, you would be right. There are a lot of teachers that shouldn't be in schools right now. And I'm not talking about the United States or Puerto Rico specific. I'm talking about teachers in general. There's a lot of teachers that go to school teaching our kids whatever version of whatever topic they're supposed to be teaching instead of the actual thing. And what I mean by that is you have science teachers that are religious, so they don't believe in anything but the theory of creation. Or you have history teachers that don't believe that the Holocaust ever happened, and those people are allowed to teach our children. That's a problem. But leave it to the left to think that unions are the solution for everything. So, yes, both sides have problems. So, how do we deal with this? And why is it important for us to understand that we shouldn't be trying to convince people of anything? Well, let me give you an example. Go back to Twitter. There is a group of people who happen to be my friends who are very much involved in causes that involve Black, African Americans specifically, but Black people in general. And they're always trying to convince other people that what they're saying is wrong. Whatever the topic is, it doesn't matter. Here's the issue. That's actually two issues. Issue number one is that there's a certain segment of Black Twitter that reminds me of a certain segment of Puerto Ricans who happen to think that the earth starts and stops with them. And if you don't believe me, go to some Puerto Ricans and try to find out where did music come from and how did it start, and they will try to convince you that it starts with them, especially salsa, reggae, reggaeton, all the every single genre you can imagine except for maybe classical music, and they will tell you and they will convince you, they will backtrack all the way through history and prove to you that it was a Puerto Rican who started it. Well, the same thing happens with African Americans. And I don't want to say African Americans because, by the way, it's not all of them. It's a specific group of people, just like in Puerto Rico. And those people will be more than happy to tell you that everything that has happened in the history of the world starts and stops with African Americans or Africans or any version of Black people. Both of them are incorrect. But that doesn't stop them from saying it. And I'm telling you because I've had friends of mine tell me when I bring up a particular issue that they claim that was started by Blacks or Africans, they will look at me, and these people are African American. They will tell me, no, that's not true. Well, guess what? These people are convinced that they are right. By the same token, and this is the second reason, you have people on every ethnicity, gender, race, whatever the denomination you want to try, religion, political belief, that will actually not be offended by something that might be offensive to a large group of people. And going back to the example of Puerto Ricans, because that's the one I know the best, there's a lot of people, including people that are very close to me at this particular moment, that have a real issue with me calling white people colonizers. Now, am I saying that they are all colonizers? No. When I talk about White Walkers and colonizers, I'm speaking about a very specific group of people. And yes, the colonization of Puerto Rico, the first one, happened in 1492, 93. I'm sorry, 93. It started in 1493. That doesn't mean that there's not a second wave of colonization happening right now. And if you act like one of those people that goes to Puerto Rico and thinks that they own the place, yeah, you're a colonizer. And I'm going to call you out on that. Yes, and I'm talking about you, Mr. Paul. Anyway, going back to the situation. As much as I am offended by many of the things that come out of people's mouths, starting with the fact that they don't seem to understand that Puerto Ricans happen to be by birth American citizens. Not my choice, but it is what it is. You will find an equal group of people that will not find that offensive at all, because if it was up to them, they would be whiter and more American than Americans are. And I can tell you that that is true because there was a movement at some point in Puerto Rico. I don't know if it still exists. I'm pretty sure it does, where a certain group of Puerto Ricans wanted to have an actual day to celebrate American citizenship. Mind you, we celebrate the 4th of July and we have that day off. And we also celebrate Veterans Day. Let me see, what other American holidays do we celebrate? Labor Day, pretty much Memorial Day, pretty much every day where we celebrate Americans is celebrated as a national holiday in Puerto Rico, but for some reason we needed an extra day. And if you've ever been to Puerto Rico, you will find out that we have a lot of holidays already. So, what am I trying to tell you? The bottom line of this video, and the reason why I decided to make this video, is because we are living through an age where people want to convince you that you're wrong. For example, Elon Musk just spent 44 billion. To be honest with you, I believe he spent 40 billion too many on an app or a social media platform just to claim that he wanted freedom of speech, but if you criticize him, he will ban your account. Make that make sense. It is not okay for Kanye West, the black man, to be pro-Nazi, which, by the way, it's not okay. I'm not saying it is, but you'll see what I'm trying to say in a second. But it's okay to bring back a leader of the Aryan nation to have his account. The person is white. Make that one make sense. Here's the thing about free speech, and I want you to remember this, and if this is the only thing you remember about this video and not the real topic of this video, I don't mind, okay? Free speech is an amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America, which means it only pertains to the government. Freedom of speech does not include any business. If he wants to claim freedom of speech and then not allow freedom of speech in anybody, that's his right, because it's his company and it has nothing to do with the government. I also want to remind you that freedom of speech is not freedom of consequences. If you decide that you want to be a complete jerk to humans of any kind, and that you openly want to mock, troll, ridicule, completely eviscerate a person because you don't agree with them for whatever reason, including things that normally we don't want to discriminate against, like gender, ethnicity, race, etc., sexual preference, for example. Let me be very clear. The fact that you have the right to call me a spick doesn't mean that I don't have the right to slap back with a snappy comeback. Just to remind you. But the more important reason, and the reason why I wanted to make this video, is because at the end of the day, we are wasting our time and effort trying to convince people that they are wrong. I'm not telling you to stop correcting people on social media, or to stop bringing up the fact that what the person is saying is misinformation. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need to be smarter than the equipment we've been given, and go ahead and provide the correction or provide the facts, and then let it go. Because that person that you're trying to correct is probably going to double down, because that's a natural reaction by a human being whenever they think they are being called out in public. Now, in private and with time, they might actually do the research and find out that they were incorrect, and on their own accord, they might actually say, you know what, I was wrong about this. They might not. The beauty of correcting or providing the correct information or the facts that you need to prove a person that they're wrong is that maybe somebody that's reading what you're actually writing will actually take the time to do the research and find out what the correct answer or the correct behavior or the correct situation is. Stop having the idea that you're going to correct somebody who thinks that they're right. Basically, let go of the outcome. Like they say in, I don't know, the New Age movement. You know how they tell you, manifest or dream whatever you want to dream, or have a goal or whatever. The Secret. I don't know if you remember The Secret, but we would tell you, believe believe what you want, believe that you have it, and then let it go. That's exactly what I'm telling you to do. I would love to hear what you have to say about this. Thank you for so much for watching, and have a nice day.